hospitality. Rooming lists, if you're traveling out of town, rooming lists as well would go in there. Okay, the lead singer doesn't want to share a room. The rest of the bands can have twin rooms each and things like that. So that's always important to do beforehand. The rest of it will go into your main contract. So if there's any issues, usually in a main contract you would also have things about recordings, for example. I know right now your intellectual property is so important. Sometimes people come to your shows and just do with their phones and record, or the festival itself or whatever, the event itself records you performing, and they're able to monetize off of that, right? But that is still your property. So you still have the right to dictate in the sort of recording and broadcasting agreement to say, you can only record the first 10 minutes of my performance, you know, and things like that, and they have to execute that. So that is also, I would say it does form a little bit of a writer, but it usually falls into your main contract as well. As when you're contracts negotiators, you need to be an excellent communicator as well, right? Always on them emails, always on them, no, I'll get back to you on WhatsApp. Like, you know, that kind of thing. Especially when it's like bigger events that are hosting hundreds of artists. It's always good to kind of maintain sort of strong email communications. Also important because if there is ever a dispute whilst you're on site or after your performance, etc., you always go back to those emails and say, but we signed it off in writing. Again, I've gotten out of a lot of problems just by saying, hey, you said yes to my request on the email. So yeah. Questions so far? No? Okay. I'm going to move on to financial management. The worst thing ever. Being able to set fees that take into account your production costs, your touring and logistical costs, the cost for band and rehearsal, meals and hospitality, and any hired equipment. It's a very important thing when you're, planning your tours, etc. And also just generally planning your finances, be able to make sure that all those costs you're able to cover in how you're charging for your productions, for your performances, etc. For an act to put on a good performance, so that picture and the first thing you saw was, oh my God, that girl was sweating for days on stage. She was like working. She had put in the effort for that. And you see it now. She's getting all these accolades. She's, getting sponsorship deals, etc. But that means she's put in the time. I was having this discussion with someone earlier, and I was like, I've never seen like one of like my faves from here on stage like breaking the sweat. You know what I mean? Like, so just to also understand that, especially on an international terrain, the competition is stiff out there, man. It's like you could be good and have your own fan base here locally that are like, yeah, you're the best thing to ever happen to. But out there, your contenders are like Shona Josie and people like that. So being able to kind of break that barrier means investing in yourself as well. And we'll get into more details about that a bit later. As I said further on in that slide, a big challenge for a local artist is the lack of self-investment. And it's being able to reinvest by preparation, again, doing all the rehearsals that you need to, promotion, being able to just have that presence online, etc., engage with your audience, and presentation, right? How does it look at the end of the day to your audience when you get on? Was it worth the $20,000 they paid for their ticket, right? So I think you fall into this trap of like there's too many groupies, there's when you're just like, I can just swag on the stage and it's gonna be, just fine. But be able to build yourself sort of that reputation that there's a guarantee you'll keep getting called back, right? The return business is where the money is. To be able to manage your own finances, you need quite strong skills in admin, particularly in office programs. Like Excel is a very important tool for. It's my favorite thing, I think, to use in anything, is to be able to just put everything in Excel and understand it. So if you don't yet have those skills, invest in yourself and do a little bit of Excel training. It's pretty easy and very fun to use once you get the hang of it. Also, these are things that I didn't put in the slide, but also compliance, right? With things like taxes and things like that, especially if kind of going forward you want to, go into this space with NGOs, you need funding for a thing, they need to see that you're a reliable person who does not misappropriate funds, etc. And the thing is, the network is very small, not just in Malawi, globally. Like, for example, just on this continent alone, I can maybe give you 8 or 9 festival directors, and they run the entire festival industry on the continent, right? You meet these people at the same conferences, you meet the network is that small. Who know what they call it, a cartel, for like people in the arts and cultural spaces. Again, you see this with Q, come to these. It'll be the same names. It's Q, it's myself, it's Music Crossroads, it's the same names everywhere. So just being able to kind of stay in those networks and build a strong enough reputation within those networks, because they talk to each other. They recommend people. If you mess up funding for one organization with the EU, everybody, UN, everybody else will hear about it. Because again, they're also a small network. That's how people fumble the bag, as they could say these days. Moving on to marketing and image, again, still part of this whole presentation kind of focus, is that the success of an artist depends a lot on good marketing and branding. A manager can help craft a musician's public image with an eye towards current trends in music and pop culture. You need to make your decision early as to what kind of artist you intend to be. And then you need to own your brand, right? You can choose to be like the artist with all the controversy, the Kanye, you can be that guy, but be consistent with it. Be willing to put up with sort of backlash for things that you do and all the negative energy that comes along with that. Be mindful that it will affect your mental health, etc. as well, So that's a very crucial thing once you're going out there into the world. It's like, this is who I am, this is what I want to protect myself from, this is how I want to present, how I want people to remember me. All of those things are very important. Like I said, some artists thrive off of controversy and certain negative social connotations, and that's fine too, because that controversy also sells, but be willing to deal with it, and take measures as well, whether it means putting yourself through therapy for some of these things, be able to take those measures. Maintaining the image once created requires a manager with strategic planning and expertise in the field of marketing. You find a lot of the time these days, and this applies even to marketers. I think that trend has been going around, as soon as something blows up on social media, all the advertisers are like, yeah, that's, you know what I mean? It's like reactive marketing. Where's your marketing strategy? Did you not plan those comms beforehand? So just being able to do that, like with Bushfire, we used to sit on part of our strategy meeting would take like 2 weeks of just communications consultation. So that by the time you're finished with that, you already know at least the baseline of what your posts are going to be for the year. At this point, we're going to put out tickets, so we'll put out 3 posts regarding ticket discounts and all of that stuff. Be more proactive in your comms than being reactive about everything. Oh, now we're going to put out a song about Mesh. Like, come on, guys. You know what I mean? Like, where was your content before that? Like, you can't just be waiting for the controversy. So yeah, that's important to managing your image. And that also speaks to kind of who you choose to collaborate with, who you choose to, whose show you choose to perform at. All of these things kind of fall under the same maintaining your brand. And then in tandem with that is in the next slide, promoting your brand now. And in Malawi, weirdly, promotion is heavily linked in with distribution and publishing, which is unfortunate. There's a lot of pressure on the artist manager because that's not supposed to be part of their role, the distribution and the publishing side. Promotion includes, but is not limited to, identifying target audiences, identifying suited distribution platforms, awareness campaigning and consumer engagement. So maybe just going back to those one by one. You will know when you're kind of styling yourself as an artist to say, this is who I'm making that music for. So it's important when you're doing your promotions as well to make sure that those communications are reaching that target audience first, right? Identifying suited distribution platforms is in tandem with that a little bit, because it's like, okay, my demographic is children aged 15. Children aged 15 and under are not on Twitter, you know, so you've got to look at what avenue, whether it is, oh, I need to put this communication somehow through the schools, you know, or whatever. It's just looking at what trends your demographic, what they tend to use as their sort of media communications, and using those platforms. Awareness campaigning is, you know, sort of prior to you putting out whatever project or whatever it is you're trying to promote, just being able to kind of introduce it before it comes through, do a countdown, whatever innovative ways you could think of to promote your materials. It's very important. Whatever post you need to boost, etc., falls under that. Consumer engagement, again, like when you're looking at sort of just under awareness campaigning, again, if you're looking at, I need to sponsor a post about this show and things like that, again, those are things you need to have factored into your budget when you're costing for your whatever revenue you're trying to get out of it. Consumer engagement is also very important. It's a more sort of that direct connection now you have with your artist. There's an American artist, Dax, he's doing that a lot. He's like always on Facebook, always just responding to comments and so on. I think there's sort of, again, two sides to that coin. Is at a point, right now I've been following him for like 2 weeks, and I'm like, I'm tired of seeing you post Dax, like every 2 seconds doesn't need to be you. But other fans appreciate that as well. So kind of just being able to manage the, again, when you're doing your communication strategy, be able to work into that, okay, we're going to take this time out of the day to engage with the audience. Actually, you know who does that really well is Tay. Tay does that very well in terms of audience engagement. He knows his market. He's there, like, my market likes to twerk. You know, every week, let's be live out here. So yeah, those are some of the things in terms of self-promotion. I have mentioned at the bottom there a tip that the multimedia industry provides the most important platforms for artist promotion. Networking in these arenas is a valuable hack for self-promoting artists. By that I mean actual just journalists, media personnel, radio broadcasters and stuff like that. Make friends with them. Like as soon as like, yo, I got a song, put it on the air, you know? Yeah, so that is why I called it a hack, because it's not really a skill set, it's just being able to be friendly with the right people. Onto touring, my favorite. I think also just kind of going back a little bit, I think you guys have already done a session on intellectual property. Yes. Who did that with you?
Tommy.
So I've got a project that's pending at the moment to do with intellectual property, and that's basically I've partnered in SA. They did like these funded videos of like just kind of what is intellectual property, what's that value chain like, etc. We're currently doing research funded by Ray Foundation on the same thing, what the terrain is doing now. So the agreement was with the South African team is that we'll use the same videos and redo them in Chichewa for like your Malawi audience. But I went through just the first video alone, and it's like, oh, and in the value chain there is the distributors. Like, oh, already we can't use this because like who's the distributor in this country, you know? So there's also that you need to be aware of, is that there's a lot of infrastructure missing in the country. But hopefully being able to come at these tables and have these discussions and find ways to collaborate and engage further would be able to create a good enough value chain so that even at the point of like publishing and distributing, we're able to understand, not just get a call from Kosoma at the end of the year, even though you didn't register with them. Come collect your money. Like, what? What do you mean? Surely there's more if you're giving me this. Yeah. Like, yeah. So yeah, we have a focus group discussion actually regarding the same coming up. So hopefully if you guys are around, we'd love to engage you there as well. But moving on to touring. And managers work with an artist record label and booking agent in putting together their clients. A manager's work with an artist is basically working with the record label, working with the booking agent, and putting together clients' touring schedules, right? So you're the middleman. You're, as an artist manager, you're pretty much just the PA for the artist. I'm still not sure who's the boss of who in that scenario, to be fair. Depends on the day. Tours have a lot of moving parts and require strong logistical and planning skills. Managers work to get their clients booked in good venues. Again, that whole thing about, you know, how you've styled yourself, so venues better be good as well where you're performing. And whatever music markets you can get through, you can get into. And essentially what the manager does is follows through to make sure that the tours are running smoothly. So usually your manager doesn't travel with you for tours. That's usually a tour manager's job. But again, because of the resources that we have available, the capacity we have in this country, you'll find your manager really absorbing all those roles. In Malawi, most managers double up as both touring manager and booking agent, although all three roles require different yet complementing skill sets. A touring manager must be strong operationally because you're planning everything on the road. This is where they must sleep. This is where they must eat. Usually for us, we'll deal with a booking person. You'll deal more with the manager at the contract stage. But when it comes to the logistics, you deal with the tour manager. And on arrival, you're basically communicating with the tour manager and not the artist, right? And then they must also be an excellent planner, again for the same reasons, and a very good time manager. Right, guys, we need to get back in the car. We need to be on stage, you know, in Lilongwe in 2 hours. That time you're by Jagondi, Stockholm. And then a touring manager must also be able to troubleshoot and problem solve in high pressure. Especially if you're touring outside of the country, there are other issues like visas and work permits and all of that. You need to be able to understand those things, requirements beforehand, and decide. Usually, it's better for you to give that to the booker and say you will handle the visas, etc. It's because they are in the country you're going to, so they probably have more access and more networks to be able to manage that for you. But there are probably cases when like the visa was processed incorrectly or something. There was 1 year at Bushfire where I ended up stuck at the border with Yemi Alade's band. In between two borders, like in between South Africa and Swaziland, no man's land, for about 8 hours because they're Nigerian and like they didn't put in double entry fees. It was a whole thing. Yeah, should have been sleeping at that time. It was after the festival, but yeah. So just being able to make sure you have all of those locked down and being able to troubleshoot in situations like that is very important. Opportunities. With an artist's growth and success come more branding, collaboration, and feature opportunities for some artists. A manager with great strategic management skills is important in reviewing opportunities and assessing both financial and branding benefits for the artist's image, right? Once you start getting them sneaker deals and stuff like that, right? That's, you're in a different realm now. You need to, you know, there's a different skill set now. You need someone who's a business manager to, you know, oversee what is this deal actually worth it, what we're getting long-term in merchandise, etc. For up-and-coming and more non-commercial artists, other opportunities are available for things like residencies, funding, grants, and exchanges. And they are more and more widely accessible now as the world gravitates towards the creative sector for new revenue streams and economic growth contributors. So that's why we're able to have these kinds of workshops, because now that funding is there and it's plenty. Someone was asking me, 2 people asked me in the past 2 days, where do you get funding calls and so on? It's like, you don't even follow Music in Africa? Music in Africa, if you don't follow it, do so now on Facebook. And because every day there's like 6 or 7 grant opportunities going out there for different disciplines, some of them we just look at them and they're like, I actually just don't even have the time to apply, you know, but it's there. And finding sort of the right networks, both on and off social media, is a very valuable tool as well. Again, get into these cartels or whatever, very strategically. So when you're invited for a show, after the show, stay and mix and mingle with these ambassadors. So they love that kind of stuff. They love knowing these artists. You'll see that the same artists get the call. A very good example actually is George because he did that very well. His market is very much that expat funders market, etc., and he positions himself quite well. This is little known fact, but I think I'm allowed to share that information. Is that, did you guys know George has like a couple of song lyrics on Beyonce's I Am King? Yeah. He obviously, his name is not credited there or anything because he just got the money and whatever. But it was from the Mr. Easy engagement, right? When he saw that opportunity, went and did a residency with Mr. Easy. And again, just being able to work super hard within that scenario, everyone else is kind of fooling about like, oh, we're hanging out with Mr. Easy and he's actually doing the work, writing the songs, etc. So now when Mr. Easy got this deal, long after that program had ended, when he got this deal to do these couple of songs on that album, who was he gonna call for songwriting? The people that he knows are good at songwriting. So he called George, paid him off for those few lines, but it's Beyonce money. It's enough to sustain until today from not like, So just, finding the right, very consciously putting yourself in the right circle is very important as well. And then the final thing I wanted to say is capacity building. And artists must remember to continuously nurture themselves creatively. I talked about that already earlier. Seeking advice and guidance on creative decisions, being in platforms like these ones, in these conversations, is very important as well. Internationally, for those of you who are able to, if at some point you can afford to go to South Africa or whatever, also look for those kinds of markets. There's always music markets. Right now there's Access happening in Johannesburg. Those, again, like I said, small network, like 9 festival managers, 10 industry execs. Like, it's the same people. You meet the same faces everywhere you go. So get into those music markets and just go and attend. Usually they're free. I know Access is free. You just needed to register and get yourself there. But the networks you make out of there is just very, very invaluable. Here, it's just these embassies and those kinds of, events and platforms, etc. What's the other thing? Seeking critique and feedback, and also being able to improve one's craft as a result of personal development goals such as this and other actions, like higher learning, self-discipline, and creating production are important. I brought this up because I know there's a lot of egos to manage within sort of an artist field. And sometimes even when an artist tries to ask you for feedback for their performance or their song, you're even scared to tell them the truth. Like, hey, let me take it back to the studio this way. Exactly. But that is just because as artists we have such big egos and we're so unteachable in many ways. And that's something you can't really go around, but if you can very consciously, even just in your own time, be like, hey, I want to, but when I self-reflect, maybe they had a point. Being able to just do that for yourself is also very important in, not falling into some of these traps. Business etiquette, like I said, and other ways to maintain a positive image, all form part of self-development and capacity building in your career. Again, I'll use taping as a very good example of professionalism. And on a personal level, I think he knows this as well, so it's no secret. I don't like the person on a personal level. But if I'm going to book him as an artist, I know for sure, I will happily do it every time. Because Tay is the most polite person in a professional setting. He's so, literally you're like, who are you? What you know? And this is also how he's been able to get all these other, collabs and international footprints and stuff, because even at festivals, like I used to do Lake of Stars back in the early days. And he was always that guy, no matter how big he got, he was always that guy backstage. If my figures were on stage, he's there like, who's their manager? I want to meet them. Can you introduce me? Like the entire time during the festival, he would be that guy, you know? So, yeah, I think I truly respect the professionalism from, because at the end of the day, and I think who was it who posted this, Mate, yeah, Afterlife Fest, something about that professionalism, because outside of the day, it's never about the personalities, right? On either side of the table, the personalities need to fall aside, and you need to just pull out your business etiquette, pull out them kind regards, and keep it moving. My last slide there was just, I hope they shared that with you, I think I was hoping to leave it. It was just about FI and what we do, the Festival Institute. And yeah, we'll be collaborating with the Tao Foundation on some things in the next year, coming up, 2022 calendar. So hopefully some of these, because we're going to do continuous learning now with our projects from January. If you'd like to stay in touch and be involved, keep an eye on all our programs on social media, please do so. Yeah. And thank you very much for your time. Are there any questions?
Master?
Sebenarnya kita di Mafuson. Mafuson aja di Mafuson tadi. Are you making sufficient enough money for it to be like a viable business?
Yeah, and then the profit is ridiculous considering to. I barely put in like any money.
Right.
Maybe for just like graphic design, because I have an in-house producer. You guys should really do that. Cut out the unnecessary costs.
Yeah.
You know, like buy your own studio equipment, bring your friend in or whatever, cut out a mix or something. It's simple because you go to a studio like a song now. It's like 40 beats.
You're the killer.
And also,
You gotta go. Yo.
and also the thing with studios whereby you go to a studio and then you just find like a lot of there's a lot of people from around the area, of which I feel like it kind of
Cuts off the creativity.
and also it dilutes your value as an artist, because every time you go on Jacob is you know, so did my imbalance in months in the range and I started trying as it seems.
There's a theory. I learned this in Joburg actually. In South Africa, they say if you have over 20 clients at your studio in a day, you're not a good producer. It means you are cheap.
Yeah.
If you have over 20 clients at your studio coming in a day, you're not a good producer. It means you are cheap. Nobody professional goes to you.
So let me tell you this. It's not about clients. I'm being you know? They're boys. They're boys. They say
bedroom producer.
episode, you know, he's got his own studio at home. You know, that's you are. The people are like, watch here, because
It's the same thing. What did he say about the investing in sort of the infrastructure?
Guys, who's writing the blue? In-house design, in-house producer.
yeah, but that is really true.
Yeah, because that's how like Lagos stars didn't survive at all in this country.
Yeah.
Because Nkobola worked very well, but Nkobola owned the land, so they owned all the bars. So all the bar sales were going back to Nkobola, all the room sales were going back, right? You're just making the ticket money, and that's it. Yeah.
Cutting costs is good.
Yeah,
I think we need to learn how to cut costs.
Yeah.
I mean, the homeboy who makes arts, artwork, yeah, take out.
And I think so, you're busy. It can be actually cutting costs. If you have, because you know, as much as that sounds like I'm not good at teamwork, I am a teamwork person. In a way, that I've got like people, you know, like Minari is got his own producer, or those people who you work with conveniently. Let's say you find them, you work, everything's gonna find the way and one graphics swap, or it's better that way. And what do much also that again, no, but I do one of these things. You know, it's good to have those.
And then now, like, these local creators now know their work now. Bro, it's like charging. Charging. Like you guys know your words now. Nah, hey, them my boy. 40K, shot. Electro property. Hey, 5,000. You gotta cut it off, man.
I'll make a beat, and then have a concept on it, and I know my vocal will not fit on there.
Okay.
I contacted somebody. I know I charged 80K for a feature.
Malami?
Like, you know what? This was that time when I just got back from Zim, and I was clapped, I was broke. I'm like, you know what? It's fine. I tried something on my own, released it. And then, funny enough, a few months later, this guy comes to my studio. He's like, bro, I want to beat, I want vocal. I looked at him and was like, yeah, that's going to cost you 60 G's. And I needed 2 more seconds. I don't discount it. I'm like, no, I want this stuff.
It's unfortunate that we don't see that us as like a collective resource have the power to actually be something really big,
Exactly.
build our own industry.
Yeah.
But we don't, because everybody has those like individuals, I need to pay the bills today. So I need that 80K today. So whether it's just I'm going to charge for a feature, even if you don't typically do that, it's like, well, that's money making out of it. I had the same thing. This is like a better verse.
Yeah.
On
What, that was you, right?
That was me.
I was like, where was it? Where was it now?
Remember that day?
Yeah.
Oh.
And like till today, every once in a while.
She's a boy too, isn't she?
Yes.
I
I was like, this is not paying the bills, guys.
gotta do something else.
You know, but yeah, every once in a while when I'm broke, I think about that song. Like, hey, I still haven't cashed in on that first day. I'm just waiting for it to pile up.
What's up, man?
Here's my invoice.
Hey, how you doing?
10 years later, like, send me the invoice.
Give me some money.
But yeah, man, I think
So
that's.
I have a question. Going back to the previous discussion about how sometimes like a label or like your management can slow you down, especially when it comes to like maybe something that needs like resources. How do you, as now a creative, when you're working with management, still like drive things in a way where it's now you pushing them to like, yo, I need to like get this out of there.
Yeah. I think especially in the first few years of engagement with someone who you trust. Somewhere within this presentation I said, but it's also still important for you to have sort of basic business management tools. And just be able to make that time and show me the books today. Show me, you know, just literally like that. You need to be hands-on. Like personally, I would opt with what the rest, like what you're doing in terms of just self-managing, right? But it takes a lot of self-discipline, right? So it's, you need to be able to make that time. Today I'm going to send out these emails. Today I need to do this. You know, you need to at some point give up that artist side of you and just do what needs to be done.
I also think, you know how we keep applauding Namadingo's team? Like, he's got a very good team, but I've been kind of in the same room with these guys, and I've noticed one thing that Namadingo was the boss of his team.
Yeah.
You know, he's got a manager, he's got a guy who runs up and down, he's got a personal assistant. I'm always already made decisions. I mean, he can't what? Sangama Bangi, for example, would I say as from you know, those kind of things, you know. So I think the great thing, maybe, you know, if it's possible, you have to already give them that perspective. I'm employing you guys, I'm the big guy, you know. Before when we do see everything in their hands, especially here, they're also pumping in a lot of money for you, right? So you can give them, okay, I think I can give them maybe 50% of my creative. It's you are just, their nose is just on what comes out of this, you know. So be the boss. You know, I think that's better for
as what you were talking about, usually labels have calendars. of like the whole, the first quarter of the so it's usually good. You already have a plan for it. Let's say the 12 was on the release, but then we're gonna go for a photo shoot. But then still Malawi, but you have to like go dollar and again the 12 which are the
magonjwa ngara zatu aje ama kauri muligale let's say the contract yago zatu but when we signed the first contract and I was in this contract you will release more singles, more videos, like you know exactly what you're doing in that particular period of time.
Yeah.
I went to Zambia was record label. So these guys are banking some competition.
Right now?
Yeah, right now. Yeah, so we went there. We win a competition, is it what? It's 60 million contract. The journal would analemba what you're doing with that. Like one album, 3 singles, like exactly what you did over 3 years, and this is what I'm doing. I'm going to sign now. Sorry guys, I don't want to be
Say as an artist, like, I'm very curious about your making profits off of the music. I might pursue a rap career after this conversation. What are your revenue streams?
In terms of what exactly? Like in general or when like?
In general, for your music. Yeah.
I would say when I put out the EP, I think I made about almost 700 something.
Okay.
And I didn't spend anything at all.
Whoa.
Literally. Okay, maybe 5,000 for the upgrade.
Yeah.
But then the beats, I do this thing where I'm an artist, you're a producer, you need my verse, I need your beat type of thing. So I don't usually transact in money.
Right.
So yeah, it's more of like a thing like that. So I need a beat from him, he might need a verse from me sometime. Or he has an artist like, yo, my artist needs a feature. So that kind of thing.
Services.
Exactly. So I get that, I make the beats, I sell the EP, I put up my accounts and stuff, so all that money was like straight to me. And I didn't spend it. Mikosi had this whole line where somebody would go to my email and then I'll send them a Google Drive link and then they would access it from there. Or I'll just be sending my files per app, which was disastrous because the ghetto youths decided to afford, and then somebody did me gangster, decided to start selling cheaper than me.
Hey.
So now mine is 1,000, right? And he was selling it at 500 bucks.
Cheaper.
That's
Cheap.
the thing, like, how do you get around the pirate stuff, man?
Wow, yeah, so and then you can't even like trace these people, even if you sue them, they have nothing.
I mean, is it not piratable on Google Drive?
No, not really, because I actually give you access, and it's a one-time thing.
Right.
But once you drop it from there, now you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But then the link is just for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that, and then features as well, randomly to my favorite beat kind of high.
Yeah.
I already know I hope they did.
Yo, hey, yo, I got a verse.
I'm like, what's up? Talk to me, man. So, yeah, that, and Osoma, I haven't really gotten anything yet, because I haven't registered. I don't know why.
You should.
Yeah.
You should.
I really should. Because I be seeing those monies and I'm just like,
You should, man.
yeah, so that's the plan. I just want to like register everything, like just go there and then all of this one. It's only like $1,000.
But they still collect your royalties regardless of whether you're registered with them or not.
So what do I do with that? Can I claim them after?
No, you
You
can't.
can probably reclaim. You
Oh, yeah.
need to.
After you register.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That must be a video.
No, you can't do them.
Yeah, you
You
can't?
can't.
Why?
I don't know, but I also did the same. Like I registered later before I started releasing my music.
So it's just money you see.
But I did not.
Like, well, yeah, so this was meant
Well,
to be
that's a problem because legally your intellectual property is your
It's still
intellectual
yours.
property. Whether you registered it or
I
not,
know.
it is your intellectual property.
Should find like proper lawyers.
Yeah, this is why I was asking about copyright laws, and I think it's also just because we're doing this research on sort of the music industry value chain. It's just like, wait, there's so many gaps,
Yeah.
and it's like, who's even speaking for us? There's no
There's
copyright
nobody,
lawyers,
like,
Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah.
And then you know how they were like working the royalties, like let's say radio stations would actually have to write it down. If a DJ has like a set or radio personality or whatever, when they play a Malawian song, they have to actually put it in the sheet, like write it down. And if they don't, they don't. So yeah, at least there's digital tracking now. It's like Shazam. Whenever they play your music, it's recorded. So they don't even have to go around. They're just like, hey, I'm gonna play William, 16 years old. So I think I love that about that.
All in all, I think right now we're able to see something out of music. We're able to get something out of music, and
More than before, right?
Yeah.
before. Because there was a time when I was like, I'll just be doing. I think Alice is an umbrella. So I listen to music just for passion. No, it was passion, not fun. Passion.
I don't want to bring
I want to fame.
Yeah. Maybe I wanted fame. But then we figure when your women is like, I think I can do this and leave.
Yeah.
They are always out there. It's just a matter of the way you brand yourself, eh? Otherwise, you end up being a very famous artist. I mean, over 50,000.
I know plenty.
Yeah.
I know plenty of artists.
Very famous artist.
I wanna follow Nyagir, but then the person is he's by himself.
Yeah.
He's from like some ghetto, excuse that.
You know?
But then they really don't even know what's going on. Like 50,000 and they'll lose their mind. And they're like, dude, you have 100,000
Follow.
on Facebook. That's ridiculous.
That's a lot of
50 knows about that. 50 in your genius. Say no more.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Jid. No, I don't need it. Yeah, but then they can't say no. But he cheat.
Strangely enough, it's the same way on this side of things, right? On the administrative side of things. Like, I still get calls today of, come volunteer at our festival. It's like, you know what? I have asked.
Volunteer?
What do you mean?
They use the vehicle. Oh, hell no.
Like, you know what? It's fine. I have a lot of admin to do.
Now so this whole thing, they trick you. They're like, it's a charity thing. I've been hit with that like 5 times. They're trying to trick us.
I'm not bad with charity.
Talking about, no, but what's the cause? No, we're thinking about it.
We're thinking about the
Imagine, I'm like,
So what? How would you advise us to handle, not to handle, in fact, but then to promote ourselves if we're doing music that the Malayan audience is not much familiar with? Because I've seen a lot of artists, Panoba, artists can be very talented artists. They are doing music, even episode music, episode rap. It's not music. It's not rap. We've got artists like Beraga, Success, and everything things. I mean, I wimba music. I can call it your samba. You're the where it's appealing to this generation.
Exactly.
Because if the largest audience in the audience comes from like the ghetto, that they receive those comedy songs.
For real.
Right? They receive those comedy songs. So how?
I gotta be
what advice would you give to people like that? Even him, his type of music.
Yeah,
It's beautiful music. The nyimbo za Woody Feo, Tima Zimbera, Zawunja Zija, because it's him doing the songs.
In fact, all three.
Yeah, imagine. Yeah.
I would say, so actually I have a question about that of why you never, or did you attempt to ever take your music beyond our borders, but put a pin in that for now.
Okay.
So I want to respond to the rest of it. And just be like, I think your management is doing quite well on that, of positioning you more on the external markets. And that's a good way to go. I think, especially now with the provisions of these Spotify's and so on, I think your manager is also quite good at kind of finding those. I know I'd suggested a few local interviews, and he's like, I don't want them to treat it like this and that. It's like, but also just be strategic with who in the press you're going to for these kinds of things. For example, in written media, I recommend Sam Banda. Sam Banda is a lover of fine art. He really appreciates good art, and he has a lot of journalistic integrity. The other person probably is a guy called Jack McBrams. You need to follow him on Twitter and stuff. He was the first Malayan to be verified by Twitter. So he writes for like the Mail and Guardian and so on, and he used to write for Nation. So those, like, first of all, look at your local artists who have, your local media, who have that kind of crossover representation, because they can expose you in terms of actually qualifying your music. But also start looking at those external markets and like very consciously being like, you know, even if it's not immediately I must call AKA for a feature, it's like there's so many other tiers of artists before that point, right? That you can be like, let's connect with them, let's go play with them at a few of the gigs out there and so on. And then just again, from there, word of mouth.
So, because I at first, when I was studying, I started with this, I call it soul, like really soul music, the slow and the piano music kind, you know. And then I saw the engagement on my page, whatever. So it was much of, hey, this guy is good. But I went nowhere with it. I was like, so what do I do? And then I saw the type of music that was on the market, that was hitting the market. I was like, okay, let me switch, you know. So I switched.
I find a lot of people do that here.
Yeah.
And I find it actually sometimes quite upsetting.
I know.
Yeah.
So I switched, and I was, because I think this year I've done much of just those kind of music, that the ghetto kind of music, you know. Yeah. So far I can say that it has helped, but for me it wasn't much satisfying, because I was like,
Yeah.
sometimes when I'm putting that music out, I don't even like the song.
Yeah.
But I know that this is
They're gonna like it.
Yeah, I'm gonna like it, you know.
That's the person.
It's already sometimes when I'm caught at events, I don't even perform those songs. I perform the other songs, you know. Yeah.
The other songs.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like the switch worked for me, and now I wanna go back to my
The music that you know and love.
Yeah, I'm hoping that maybe because this time maybe if you are familiar with me, maybe they can still.
That's the beauty of that action.
Yeah.
You get to a certain point where you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
then you're just like,
Yeah. There's, I think, other ways also in which you can do it. If it's about the revenue alone, also other things, like I said, like George for now, he's just making money off of songwriting, a couple of verses here, you know. I guess the same with beat making and so on. But actually, I like also the kind of infrastructure you have around you, with that you've got an in-house studio and so on. And have you considered other sort of ways in which you use your creativity for money, like you do adverts and do stuff like that?
I've actually done a few things. I actually did some advert for, is it the Elite Real Estate, just like yesterday or the other day? Yeah, so like I've had a few brands like approach me to do, like adverts. Like Speed, I definitely should do this. So remember that whole Amanja thing I did? Did you guys see that? It was like Amanja. Like I did some video.
Oh yeah.
So they were introducing this.
They are.
Hey, that was. So they were introducing this food delivery type item. So they wanted me to redo that. Where I'm asking my mom, like I'm a grown ass man asking my mom about food, and then my mom was like, "Nah, son, she didn't call like speak Korean." So yeah, so done a few things.
Yeah.
So that voiceovers as well. I've done a movie. So yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think, what I was gonna say is like also look at those other avenues of like your creativity goes a long way. I don't understand why the creative sector and the corporate sector / the government sectors why we don't gel. We have no meeting point. It's like, why have you got someone, you saw those roundabouts they had for, it's not SADC, it was 6th July, I think.
Yes.
That someone said it looks like a Viking funeral. And then you see these guys who did this very basic installment at Life Fest with the lights and so on. It's like, why is this industry not meeting at a point? You know what I mean? But sometimes it's also, again, it's how you position yourself. But you've been at Airtel, right? So you've got the networks, you've got the corporate expertise. That's another thing that I would love to share with you guys, is that a little bit of corporate experience somewhere. Go do an internship in these offices and so on with like good companies. I spent 3 years at doing HR for Ernst & Young in Blantyre, right? They are globally they've been in the past 10 years consistently every year being voted the best employer in the world. right? So can you imagine what kind of expertise I got from there? That's why I'm getting calls from like Bushfire and not freaking Sandfest, right? You know, so yeah, it's so valuable to do. I know it's like all of us are like, we don't want blue collar jobs and so on, but sometimes to break away from the system, you need to see how the system works. You know? So,
I think for the meeting point of the corporate world and creative work, I would say we are slowly getting there.
so
Yeah. The only setback might be that you really need to be like there for a company or an organization to think of using you for their products.
Yeah.
Yeah, but otherwise I think lately they've been trying. I've seen KK in his standard bank stuff. Yeah,
used to be. Yeah.
I've seen.
So, but then you really have to be there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like if DH is with patients,
Yeah.
Tinem, Ellie.
There's Unayo with Lulu now.
Yeah.
Standard bank.
So, but then you have to, you know.
but that's more on a brand ambassador.
Yeah, but they're not really
right?
what you're.
But in terms of like actually just the creative side, like someone needed to produce those adverts. A very funny thing that I saw was when the British government were trying to shut down all the events in the UK because of COVID. And they said, they put out a poster with like this girl dancing or whatever, and they're like, artists need to find other jobs or whatever campaign the minister was saying, like, you artists can do anything else besides this. And then someone took that same thing and shared it, and so you had to call a graphics designer, you called all the artists to do your poster. You know, so yeah, man, it's all the other places in which art belongs where people end up just going, I'll just call my cousin, we can do a poster on PowerPoint, you know? So yeah, but I think all of that is all part of the networking. We did 12 o'clock, is that when it ends?
Yeah.
Okay. This was very good, I enjoyed it. There was that other question I said I was coming back to.
Oh, the international item.
Yeah.
No, I've never really done that because I'm still trying to figure out how to get bigger here.
Yeah.
So I've never really had the whole thing. But then I sort of had like an eye open on China because my whole thing was like, oh, how do I accommodate these Malawians? Oh, is my English too much? Should I dumb it down? Should I do this? So in all of that, it's like really stressful. So just trying to find a more Gwamba-ish song just to be accepted. You know what I mean? So I've been trying to do that, but then I used to be just for release. I'll just record a video, freestyling to, like, I'll say whatever bars I want, regardless if you get them or not, right? And then just put them on like, Instagram. And then surely enough, one day with enough hashtags, I had like Cassidy in my DMs.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I was like, the world is big. As in Cassidy, as in cousin wake wa dano. Pamonaga Alice Magi. He's cousin, like he did a song with our cat, and he was in my DM.
Wow.
Talking about, yo, you putting in work. I'm like, excuse me? And then I see the account verified. I go search the whole thing. I'm like, it's actually him. And then because he saw my freestyle that I was not making for Malawians. You know? So that's when I was like, oh, this is really small. So I'm actually working on that.
Please do. We've talked about you. I think it was with Alex.
Oh,
when we were talking about this thingy,
Oh.
came up and we were like, I don't know why he doesn't
He doesn't
want to
really-
go international.
Guy is lazy.
Hey, sometimes I just shagari this morning.
There was a time that I felt
Like
like
the twos is like,
I felt like he gave up.
I had the songs. So
Yeah.
I think he's right. Because I haven't really been, I think I've been caught up with my corporate item, like my job, my day job.
Yeah.
So
Once-
the music side.
Once you
is
go
just
there, bro, you
different.
feel like I think I belong here.
Yeah.
But you don't belong there.
Sorry about that. I'm going to resign today. I'm the marketing officer. I'm here to
Like, yeah, I attended the workshop.
Yeah.
That's what I learned.
I'm burning my degree tomorrow.
Oh man.
Yeah, we're trying to do that.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, man. man. All the best with you guys. I see you. I see you want to do. You know, the thing is, when it was our time, when we were doing all these things, we didn't have these people wanting to do workshops with us and shit. You know, you had to learn the ropes by yourself. So that you have this infrastructure and people willing to share this information is such an important tool. It means, the last of these that I did at Music Crossroads, there was a girl there who was like, oh yeah, I didn't know. These are good because I look at you and I'm like, I want to be like Tammy. And I'm looking at her like, no, you have all the resources, my girl. I'm here now, so you're not going to be the next time. You're going to be better than me, you know?